Up, we're going to welcome in a different type of guest in regards to we don't stray from sports completely on this show very often. We do like to talk about pop culture. We do enjoy a lot of music, but we know what's going on in the country, and it's on everybody's mind. It's something that we're dealing with in addition to the coronavirus pandemic, which we'll have our daily coronavirus pandemic update in the second segment. But George Floyd was murdered on Monday in Minneapolis, right in front of public view. And it was videoed for all to see. And the fallout from that has been numerous protests around the country. Unfortunately, some of the protests, not all, but some of them, including one last night in Birmingham, have turned violent. Joining us to give some insight into what's happening, and particularly here in Tuscaloosa. And I'm so proud yesterday, Joe, that Tuscaloosa had a march and a protest downtown for unity, and it was completely nonviolent. And it was as smooth as you could absolutely ever expect to have. And I know there's some others planned. Jerry Carter, president of the local NAACP chapter here in Tuscaloosa, joins us this morning. Good morning, Jerry.
Hey, good morning, Gary. How are you?
Great. Good to have you on. I appreciate you joining us to kick off the show. And there's so many different ways that we can go with this, but let's just start with where we're at. And that is protests that have been triggered by what we saw Monday in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd, who was pinned to the ground by a police officer, was no threat at that point, was handcuffed, and instead of being led up and being led away, the police officer continued to put his knee on George Floyd's neck, even after George Floyd was pleading that he could not breathe, and the result was the man passing away. And it's unfortunate for all of us, obviously, and I think anybody that saw what happened will make no excuses. But that has triggered reactions from around the country. People's right to protest is something precious in this country. I know you obviously at the NAACP understand that, but some of the protests have turned violent. They've turned into riots, including one last night in Birmingham. Just kind of fill us in from your perspective as the leader of the local NAACP chapter, what we're dealing with right now in this country and in our local community as well.
Okay, very quickly, I want to first of all say, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's a complete honor to be on this program because, like you said, this is not a part of your normal programming. So for you to invite me here, it's an honor. I appreciate it.
Well, Jerry, we appreciate you.
Yes, sir. But just to go ahead and cut to the chase, myself, back in the early 90s, I was beaten by a police officer, a Tuscaloosa police officer. I was with a young lady who I was married to, unfortunately, because of that incident, for only 6 months. I'm sorry. And she got angry because of a verbal dispute. There was nothing physical. I never touched her, never hit her, anything. Without my knowledge, she picked up the phone and called the police. So next thing I know, police were coming from all over the place. But long story short, it turned into a back and forth between the officer and I because I was blindsided by what was going on. And me being at the age that I was at that time, I think I was around 30 years old. I'll be 60 in June. I didn't understand that really and truly if I had just stood there, not said anything, the fact that, you know what I'm saying, that my innocence would have eventually spoke for itself. Mm-hmm. But all of these police officers and all this stuff was all over the place, and this guy was coming at me hard, and I was defending myself verbally. Mm-hmm. He got tired of me doing that, and he grabbed me around my throat. I had a towel. We were all supposed to go out, my ex and her sister and some other people. And he twisted it and choked me. Mm. That turned into a back and forth, and he and I tangled up, and we kind of wrestled around the room, just tore up all kind of stuff. And I landed on top of it. The other officers picked me up, handcuffed me, and when I tell you this guy beat me, I had a black eye, cuts in my face, and everything. To get to the point, because that story is behind me, what I eventually had to end up doing to make the case go away, and by the advice of my attorney, I went ahead and pled guilty to assault, interfering with police, and resisting arrest, misdemeanor charges. Because he told me otherwise, if I had tried to take it to court and plead my case, if I had lost going against a police officer, I would probably be going down the road. So that ended a 6-month marriage. I'd only been married to this lady 6 months. But anyway, a year later, I was home watching the news, the local news, and I saw this gentleman on the news. He went downtown on duty on a motorcycle and shot his wife. Well, he shot his wife and then he killed himself. Do you remember that incident?
Vaguely, I do.
Okay, that was the officer. Okay, so I have experienced it, and I had, fortunately in my life, I've moved on. Those misdemeanor charges have not hurt me. I'm retired from my job. I'm a Air Force veteran. I'm 100% disabled from through the Air Force and all that type of stuff. My life went, I moved on with my life. But that's not always the case with some other people. And what I'm going to do is go back very quickly with 3 cases. I'm not going to try to go over everyone who's been killed, but just 3. In 1994, a gentleman by the name of Amadou Diallo, this was in New York, 4 officers fired a total of 41 shots, 19 struck him. They were charged with second-degree murder, and they were ultimately acquitted. And the whole thing started behind a case of mistaken identity. They thought he was this guy, was a rapist that they had encountered at one point, and they felt that he was dangerous and all this other kind of stuff. But he wasn't even the guy, the gentleman that they were looking for. Okay, a gentleman by the name of Sean Bell. Himself and 2 of his friends were at Mr. Bell's bachelor party. He was supposed to get married the next morning. They were, doing what people do, young people do at a bachelor party. They were at a club, having a good time, this, that, and other. An undercover police officer was there, overheard some conversation. This is the police account. Some conversation about something about a gun and a dispute that they were having with someone. But anyway, long story short, the encounter kind of spilled over into the outside of the club. The gentleman was in the car, and the officer says that, he approached the car, identified himself, and Mr. Bell tried to run him over. A total of 50 rounds were fired. Mr. Bell was killed. Now, this is on the morning of his wedding at this point. This is after midnight. And the 2 other gentlemen were seriously injured. 3 officers were charged, and they were all acquitted. Okay, and then you have Abner Louima. This is 1997, also in New York. He was beaten in a patrol car by an officer and then taken to a restroom where he had the handle of a broken broom rammed into his rectum. Now, he suffered severe internal injuries. I don't want to be too graphic, but let's handle of a broken broom.
Yeah,
okay,
I got it, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to move on. So anyway, then we, Sandra Bland in Texas. Mr. Gray, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Eric Gardner. I can go on.
And Mr. Carter, I understand there is a history of this, and I appreciate you pointing out that this isn't a one-time thing that led to this. I do want to move on to where we're at now with the reactions, and I've been familiar with the NAACP. I was born in '64, so I grew up watching peaceful protests, peaceful marches. And again, I have no problem with the right to protest. That is what we do. That is the way that we can affect people and hopefully impact change. But what do you make of the fact that many of these? I know it's a lot of frustration involved, but they've turned violent, and in many cases, people are destroying the very communities in which they live. That can't be the way, right?
Well, I've never been a part of a violent protest. I've participated in protests, but never anything violent.
Right.
So that's not anything that I would promote, condone, or anything like that. But at the same time, I went through all of those different incidents to make the point that when people start to feel that, okay, here goes another case and nothing's going to happen, maybe what other way do you suggest they vent their frustrations when you try to have faith in the criminal justice system and time after time after time after time, it fails us. Now it's failing us from the White House. We pretty much always had a president who was presidential, who would take charge and try to be that voice of reason. That father that would say, okay, everybody kind of calm down and all. We don't have that in my opinion. And so I can't get into all these different people's heads, what would make them burn down a store or whatever. That's something I wouldn't do. But at the same time, I can't really condemn those people. And I'm saying it's wrong now, don't get me wrong. But I can't say that what's going on inside their head when these people just over and over and over. What we saw a week ago today was nothing short of an execution, a lynching. right before our eyes. The gentleman was so desperate, he was screaming for his mother, who has been deceased 2 years. Okay, and he still wouldn't get up. Now, that alone for any person, me, I was just, okay, the guy is begging for his mom. You know, I think that anyone with an ounce of stability in their body would just say, okay, you know, let's let him up.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, so, but, you know, I'm trying to move on because I know you don't have a lot of time. But my point, once again, is you have to understand that everyone, for the most part, but especially black people, we have, if you have not witnessed it yourself, most people who have actually witnessed lynchings are probably no longer with us. But I grew up seeing pictures where people were posing beside a body that was hanging from a tree. I have heard stories about people crying and just pleading, I didn't do it, and being executed because of a lie that was told on them. See, people are sick and tired of being failed by our own government, our own criminal justice system. All of those guys should have been arrested. We saw it. We were looking at it. Now, I understand there's a process, and you can't just, you have to, there's a process. But at the same time, it shouldn't take that long for all 4 of those officers to be arrested. Because if you or I did that, how long would it take for us to be arrested?
I think you make a terrific point there. Mr. Carter, let me ask you this as we move forward, because again, you're right. You gave us a lot of incidents. It's not just one, but the ability to, protesting aside, that incident aside, will we ever come together? Is there an opportunity here now to for us all to live together peacefully, or are we always going to deal with this because of the differences in skin color and the differences maybe in gender and religious thoughts? And we're all in the same country, we're all Americans, but there are differences. How can you go from these differences dividing us to actually being celebrated and bring us together? Is I assume the answer is very difficult because we can't seem to find it, right?
I don't think it's very difficult at all, to be honest about it.
All right, tell me.
When you start seeing videos every other week of white men being chased down the road by a police officer and shot in the back, this starts to be a common occurrence. When you start seeing a little young, blonde-haired white girl being beaten like a dog and drugged and everything else and ultimately killed like Sandra Bland was, then I'm going to say things are becoming equal, but in an uncivilized manner. See, right. Things are unequal now. Things are unequal now, but black people are on the short end of the stick. We are yet to be afforded the same rights that you as a white man are. We still don't have those rights yet. And that's why people are angry. But the thing that really, and I don't know, it's going to sound crazy, but to see the amount of white people who are out there protesting along with these people, that within itself, that's the bright side of this whole thing, if there is a bright side. Now, it's wrong to burn down a city and innocent people's business and that type of stuff. But at the same time, that tells me there are a lot of good white people who are sick and tired of it too. They know they're wrong. They know it's wrong. Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, everyone else, I don't care who you name, we all have rights under the Constitution. I don't care how bad your crime is, what you did. This gentleman was accused of trying to pass a fake $20 bill. That was his crime. And he was treated in the manner that we saw.
Yeah.
So until this thing, just comes to a point. When I say this thing, I'm talking about until we all are respected and treated in the exact same manner in which the Constitution promises that we would be. I'm a veteran. I served in the U.S. Air Force, and I was in the Army National Guard for a while. I'm a proud veteran. I'm a patriotic person. But I still feel like my country has failed me. But I haven't given up on it.
Sure. What do you have planned here? Is the NAACP involved in any thing coming up in regards to what we're dealing with? Do you have a march planned, or tell us locally what you're working on?
We're trying to put together something now. There's already been a couple of marches. I'm supposed to be a part of one that some young people are putting on Wednesday, and then there's another one at Government Plaza Sunday. We're not doing, but I've been invited to be a part of it. But we're working on something because, and I really want to address the very issue that I assume you invited me on the program to address. And that's, obviously Mr. Floyd's passing is the number one concern. But I want to also put a little bit more focus on the violence that has accompanied that party.
Okay.
And attention needs to be put on that. And I think more people are kind of focusing on his death and the police brutality. But it's also time, and I agree with you, that we put focus on the violence, that aspect of it, because you don't want to end up not only, destroying people's property, but you don't want to have other people who end up getting killed trying to, right or wrong.
That's right.
So that's what I'm going to try to work on, and we're going to start working on that this week.
Well, Mr. Carter, we appreciate your time and your unique perspective, and wanted to invite you on so that we could discuss this. And thank you so much. And we'll visit again soon. Okay.
Yes, sir. I look forward to meeting you one day.
All right, Jerry Carter.